Lesson 4, Citing Sources in Writing. What is citing? Citations, or citing references, is acknowledging that the ideas you're writing about came from someone else. So when you write a paper, that should all be your words and your ideas. However, when you incorporate research from someone else, you are using someone else's ideas and someone else's words. When you do that, it's hard to determine what's your words and what's the words out of the research. So you have to cite, so anyone reading your paper knows the difference between your ideas and the ideas you got from somewhere else. So there are a lot of rules about citing your sources, and I'm just going to give you the basics because this is kind of your first introduction to the research process. So here are the basics, and we'll go into each of these in the next couple slides. The first one, name your source next to the information. Second one, use quotation marks around passages you copy word for word. The third one, include page numbers when quoting word for word. And the fourth, put a bibliography or reference sheet at the end of your paper. Name your source. So whenever any of the information that you talk about in your paper comes from somewhere else, you have to say the source of the information. So on here I have the example, according to the American Kennel Club, Dalmatian dogs have a life expectancy of 11 to 13 years. So you would not have known that Dalmatian dogs have a life expectancy of 11 to 13 years if you never saw it in your research, right? So that's not your idea. The idea came from the American Kennel Club. So you have to say, according to the American Kennel Club. Now, if you don't want to say that, the other option is to include in parentheses at the end of the sentence your source. So Dalmatian dogs have a life expectancy of 11 to 13 years. In parentheses, www.akc.org. So that's the website where you got that information. Now, if you're copying information word for word, now that's a whole sentence or a whole chunk of sentences, you have to put quotation marks around it. This lets the reader know that this exact sentence comes from someone else's writing. So the example here says, Dalmatians have a job description unique among AKC breeds, coach dog. So this exact sentence you should be able to find on akc.org on page 2. So anything that you pull word for word from your research has to be in quotation marks. If you want to take this information and reword it, you don't need to do that, but you still need to put in parentheses akc.org because that idea came from the American Kennel Club. If you are quoting word for word, you also have to have the page number or paragraph number if it's a website. So the idea is that somebody can go to akc.org and on page 1, they have this exact same sentence that they can see in your paper and from the website. Don't forget the bibliography. Now this seems like it's the hardest part, but there are websites out there like citationmachine.net that help you organize all the information for your bibliography. You'll need things like the author or the title, the year that it was published, the publisher, the city where it was published, that kind of information. So make sure that you copy all of that down when you are searching for your sources. When you are creating your bibliography, each source is going to have its own entry, and it has to have a hanging indent, which means the second line is going to be indented, not the first line like normal. So you can see in my example here, the red arrow is pointing to the hanging indent, which means the second line, it went so long that the second line is indented. So what's going to happen is the author's name is going to be sticking out on each entry. And the entries should be in alphabetical order by the first letter. So here, Strauss is the first word, so this would be alphabetical by S. So anything that is before that in the alphabet would be above this entry, and anything after S in the alphabet would be below this entry. So everything should be in alphabetical order from top to bottom. So to recap, you always name your source. When you're quoting word for word, you have to use quotation marks and page numbers. And your bibliography should be in alphabetical order using hanging indents. And now it's time for a quick multiple choice quiz.